Okay, thank you. I would like to invite Sam and Laura for community-led resilience hubs, and we will ask them some questions.
Thanks for joining us in reimagining community resilience hubs in rural Vermont. With an unprecedented amount of investment at the federal and state levels earmarked for an equitable energy transition, it's really important we assess successful models for implementation to ensure that these investments produce sustainable community-level results. The concept of the Resilience Hub sits at the nexus of community and energy resilience, emergency management, climate change mitigation, and social equity, while providing opportunities for communities to be successful before, during, and after disruptions. We believe adapting this model for our rural communities has the potential to augment existing centers, think libraries, community farms, town complexes, to reduce energy burdens, reduce fossil fuel use and greenhouse gas pollution, complement existing emergency management, and more.
We know that Vermonters can come together during catastrophes such as hurricanes and COVID. Local champions step up and they meet the needs as they arise from community members, ecosystems, and infrastructure. We see increasing impacts of climate change, and we note that this reactionary cycle of the efforts result in delayed deployment, burnout, and lack of access to basic needs. But a resilient community has this built capacity for responding to everyday conditions, and is also able to adapt and provide not only basic needs, but opportunities to thrive.
Many of our communities across our rural state lack a central hub to formalize community and external assets, including services, investment, volunteer, and professional support. Renewed efforts across the state are focusing on reducing energy burdens, access to heating and cooling, broadband, healthy and affordable food, transportation options, and reliable, well-compensated work. All of these efforts will increasingly depend on clean, reliable, affordable energy. And access to services and the financial, social, environmental benefits of clean and resilient energy at the community level is essential.
The Urban Sustainability Directors Network has developed a Resilience Hub model which uses a physical space to focus investment and a community process to lead it. This model leverages pre-existing and community-managed facilities that provide year-round services and expands them to help coordinate resource distribution, services, and communication, and provide technical assistance to reduce carbon pollution, enhance quality of life, and strengthen energy and community resilience. Core components of resilience hubs are also the main categories where upgrades to existing community facilities are often needed. One we often don't see but really need is resilient power, reliable backup power to the facility during a hazard, while also improving cost effectiveness and sustainability of operations in all three operating modes. Resilience hubs serve communities in three modes or operating conditions. Every day, where their primary focus is community services, programming, and relationship building. During a disruption, where they're able to amp up and augment their services to provide backup and complementary emergency management, and throughout recovery. The Resilient Hub model not only supports broader state goals towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions, improving communication and emergency response, and strengthening local economies via workforce development, but it critically addresses the disproportionate impacts of systemic inequities, natural disasters, and climate change on frontline communities.
Our pitch focuses on how to adapt the successful model of urban resilience to our rural communities. We plan to bring together a working group of diverse team members to review existing research and community-centered approaches to community and rural energy resilience, and then co-develop what a resiliency hub element should be with existing community-based organizations. A main component of the proposed pitch is to work collaboratively with overstretched and under-resourced community members. We plan to utilize the award money towards community engagement strategies, such as offering translation, childcare, food, and/or stipends for participation. The ultimate goal is to set the foundation for 2 pilot community resilience hubs through broad community engagement that develops clear priorities. And we see this community co-development as a replicable but iterative process.
By centering these conversations around those most affected by climate and energy injustice, the first year of this project will focus initially on 2 communities, one in Orleans County and one in Washington County. Vermont's most rural communities carry the highest energy burden. 12 communities have energy burdens of 15% and above, most of which are in the Northeast Kingdom, including Orleans County, with the major exception of Berry City in Washington County, which ranks in the 10 highest burdened towns in the state across all 3 sectors: electricity, thermal, and transportation. As established in recently passed Act 154 on environmental justice and the 2019 Vermont Energy Burden Report, BIPOC, low-income, and rural Vermonters have largely been left out from major economic, social, and environmental benefits associated with investments in climate resilience and renewable energy infrastructure. BIPOC Vermonters were 7 times more likely to have gone without heat in the past year, over 2 times more likely to have had difficulty affording electricity, and 7 times less likely to own solar panels than white Vermonters, while rural communities consistently carry the highest energy burden. We're not starting from scratch by any means. We are looking to focus investment that is traditionally happening on an ad hoc basis and or fragmented between different governmental, professional, volunteer, and nonprofit efforts onto pre-existing community-embedded facilities to expand and support their efforts while addressing energy infrastructure intentionally. We have a broad pool of expertise and interested parties with which to move forward.
We can move the implementation needle with climate solutions that work because they are designed by and for the communities that they serve. We can expect far-reaching return on investments both within a given community and across the state as the model is put into practice, iterated, and innovated in the years to come.
Thank you for your consideration. We hope you support our efforts to reduce local energy burdens and greenhouse gas emissions, strengthen community and energy resilience, and shift power to communities.
For the community hubs, Jacob says, this makes me think of local schools. Is there a synergy between schools and your idea?
Yeah. All right. If you can hear me, yes, definitely schools are a wonderful opportunity that's a community-based asset already, and so would be a part of the conversations as to the union district or whatever is the overarching supervisory union, whether they're open to that, because also as we start to see the impacts of climate shifting, they could be a great opportunity for cooling centers, both for the school year, but then also within the summer months when they're underutilized.
Absolutely, and I think the conscious thing we were thinking about when we were at the pre-pitch summit and had members who were representing schools, in that conversation was to make sure that we also don't automatically assume that they don't have enough to do already. I'm sure that is the case for everybody, but oftentimes it is a really convenient space. So absolutely keeping them part of the group, part of the conversation, but also looking at, local libraries provide a ton of services, everything from CPR courses to upper childcare to providing internet access and computers to many residents who don't have them. And so where are those places naturally happening as well that do a lot of work with schools already too? So absolutely it's that kind of, let's focus on those connections where people already are and bring everybody together and focus investment there. And I think that investment piece is also another thing that's a little bit complicated with schools, just because funding streams tend to be earmarked differently for school districts. And I think that's just kind of a logistical piece that we're not saying is a huge barrier, but is something to consider.
All right. Okay, for you two. What makes the community resilience hubs different from the community resiliency organizations or CROs already in existence in Vermont, if you know about those organizations?
I think we would absolutely be looking to invite CROs to the table, or actually let's be asked for a seat at their table, given the longevity of, and tremendous work that they've done throughout our state. I think this is not necessarily different. It has an emphasis on looking at how we can stack the funding that is sort of very, very new, coming down right now, both at a federal and state level, stack that into a physical place, and then utilize CROs and other organizations who are already working with communities. So basically be to support organizations like CROs in physical places. So I think it's just kind of another level and like an overlay that's going to help sort of bring sustainability, I guess, if you could say, to those efforts. We're seeing a lot of different groups over time form these wonderful relationships, and we just want to make sure that there is the funding in place to invest in that space. Does that make sense? I hope that answers the question, and I'm happy to continue.
How will the Resilience Hub planning and engagement coordinate with the state's update to the Hazard Mitigation Plan, which also includes engagement goals?
I'll just do a quick pitch in terms of what we've heard today and a lot of these other sessions has been how do we engage? It's part of how do we engage with communities? And so this is a level 1 pitch, which would be looking at existing ways that different organizations and state entities are engaging currently. And doing an assessment of what other places are doing this equitable engagement and what are some of those tools that we can also bring to the table.
I'm very much involved with local hazard mitigation planning on a town-to-town basis, actually. And I think it's wonderful that the new policy updates include an increased focus on climate change and considering the effects of climate change on populations at a 5 to 10 year level of looking at mitigation. And then also vulnerable populations. And so I think a lot of that work, a lot of that increased focus does require community engagement and you know, being the person on the ground is doing that in several towns right now across the region. You know, we keep inviting community members into quote unquote our space or a town space. And we try, I would say that first of all, there's oftentimes well, everybody gathers here, but there's not necessarily enough space for everybody, and or it's being used for another group, and or it doesn't have heat right now, so can we do this in the spring, and or that kind of thing. So actually, what we're trying to focus is how do we focus to ensure that those spaces are large enough to serve the whole community, have clean and resilient power. That's kind of the whole point of the model. And so I think they would absolutely go hand in hand together. And I think that there is an increase in terms of the Department of Health has heating or hot weather preparedness engagement going on right now. You have health equity going on right now. You have a lot of different groups who are sort of looking at bits and pieces of this, and this is like, how do we focus them all together so we can actually leverage them on the ground, and all of the programs that are sort of targeting really the same group of a few local champions are not, how are we not going to burn out on any one of those really important initiatives?
That was a perfect wrap. Okay, wrap on wrap. Okay, we are going to thank these folks for bringing their pitches and answering your questions. Yay.